this video, I want to cover some tips about client interaction because I think this is one of the things that slows barbers down the most. So I'm going to give you some things that helped work for me and for the other barbers that I've worked with. So starting with probably the number one thing that I see barbers struggle with timing is the fact that they're just talking so much. And the more you talk as a barber, especially if you're new, the harder it's going to be to actually get the focus on getting the haircut done, right? Because it takes mental energy to have a conversation with your client. It just does. Even if you are very skilled, it's even when I go off track a little bit, I've noticed it still slows me down. And I'm very comfortable with talking and cutting at the same time. But it's actually they've done scientific studies on this, and it's actually impossible to multitask. So you're really just doing one thing while doing a really crappy job at the other, right? So if you're talking a lot during a haircut, which some clients really appreciate, that it's going to slow you down. So you just have to be aware of that. So I think the skill is to be able to get the client to talk, because ultimately it's about them, right? It's not about us. And that's human nature to want to talk about ourselves, but the reality is we have a job to do, right? We have to take care of them. They came to us to get a haircut, first of all. Yes, they probably want to see you and they have a great relationship with you, but ultimately, they're coming to get a haircut. So that is the priority. You can still talk to your client and have a great conversation. All I'm saying is you can redirect conversation back at them to put the energy and the effort on them in terms of talking, and you can just focus on the haircut. So one of the best ways to do that is to just ask a bunch of questions, right? With open-ended responses, not like, hey, how are you? You could say something like, so what do you have planned for the weekend, right? Or what have you done today so far? Something that doesn't have like yes or no answer to it. They have to think about it. And I also found for me that really helps where everybody has like a subject that they love talking about, right? Most people. And if you ask enough questions, you will hit on that subject, and then the client will just start talking and you won't have to say a damn thing. And I love it when that happens. And I also make a note to write that down in the client notes for next time, because I'm like, this guy loves talking about investing. He loves talking about sports, whatever. So that way I don't have to guess again. Next time I'm just like, I look at his notes before I take him back. Oh, he likes talking about sports. I'm gonna make sure I ask him about whatever the local sports team is or whatever he's into. So that's the first thing, is you want to try to get the client to talk. And there's a really, really good book on this that like changed my life. I don't know, 10, 15, maybe $20 on the high end. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Read the book or listen to the audiobook, or maybe you can find it online for free. My God, read that book. It will make your life so much easier. And this is what they talk about almost the entire book, is just how to talk to people, which is part of the job. It's not the job, but it's like, if you know how to cut hair and you can talk to people, oh man, and you can stay on time, then you have such a huge advantage as a barber. So it's one thing to be able to do good haircut. It's another thing to be able to do good haircut and talk to people, and then to be able to do a good haircut, have a good conversation, and finish on time. That's a superpower. It's super simple, and because a lot of us barbers, we tend to focus on skills in terms of haircutting skills, and while that's great, it's not going to take you to the next level. You need to have other skills besides just the ability to do a haircut. So if you also learn the skill of communication and how to correct the conversation where you want it to go, that also applies outside of the barbershop, because you have to keep in mind that one day you're not going to be cutting hair anymore, right? So if all you do is invest in hair cutting skills, that's not going to be useful outside of the shop, right? When you can't cut hair anymore, or you don't want to cut hair anymore. So build yourself, right? You're the asset that you're building. So don't just focus on only getting better at cutting hair. That will help you, absolutely. But you also want to learn how to talk to people. You want to start getting into some inappropriate conversation, steer them back towards something, turn people from a bad mood into a great mood. There's so many things you can do with that skill. And people that have great conversations and you develop strong bonds with them, they're almost always going to be better tippers. So you're ultimately going to make more money and get paid to learn an amazing skill, which is going to help you for the rest of your life. So that's probably the biggest one that I see slows barbers down a lot, is just talking way too much. Read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's going to change your life. I hope it changed mine. So then just try to get the conversation back to them so that you can focus on cutting hair. And if you have a client that doesn't want to talk, that's great. That's like case scenario, because some guys, they're coming in from work, they're tired. The shop is like their chance to get away, right? So they're just gonna close their eyes and let you cut. That's fine. There's not every client likes to talk. So you have to be able to kind of pick up on if they're giving you kind of quick, short answers in the beginning, how's your day going? And they're just like, good. Then they probably don't want to talk that much, right? You can still try, but don't try to force somebody to talk, right? It's okay to not talk to your client, but if they do want to talk, all I'm saying is try to get them to do the talking, right? So that way you can focus on getting the job done. And then here's another one that it's just crazy, but a lot of barbers don't think about this, but like learn how to say no. You might be surprised to hear me say that, but sometimes you have to tell your client no. So what are some scenarios for that? Well, let's say somebody books a haircut, right? And you're fully booked. All you got is 30 minutes to do this cut, and you got somebody coming in right after. And all they booked was a haircut, nothing else. And then while they're in your chair, they decide they want to add on a beard trim, which is going to, you can probably take an extra 15, 20, 30 minutes maybe. And some barbers might feel uncomfortable saying no to that. And if they go ahead and do it, right, the client's going to appreciate it, but it's automatically going to put you behind. So some of the things in this course have actually nothing to do, that can save you money or save you time, have actually nothing to do with your skill and what you do with the clippers. And I think actually some of the most powerful stuff that I talk about in this course has nothing to do with how you do the haircut, which is like, sometimes you just got to say no, right? Like, I'm sorry, I don't have time to do that. But you can also offer an alternative, right? My coworker over here has time. He can take care of your beard. I got time for the haircut. I can take care of your beard. Or what you can do is, another way to do this is you can see if one of your coworkers can take your next appointment, right? So you got somebody coming in right after this guy, and he wants to add on a beard trim, which is fine, but somebody has to take your next one so that you can do it. Otherwise, if you just go ahead and do it, you're going to be way behind. But now, if you do work on your time and you go through everything in this course and you get your time down, if you do add on the time and fall behind, then maybe with the next one, you can catch back up. So that's one of the nice things that happens when you do get your time down, is that you don't have to say no as much, but it is going to happen where you're going to have to tell clients no every now and then. It's just the reality of what we do. Another scenario where you might need to tell somebody no is if they show up way late, right? No matter how fast you are, there is a time, like minimum amount of time that you're going to need to do this haircut. And I wish I could give you like set time that works in every scenario, but the reality is when it comes to like grace period of how long you should allow clients to be late, I found that it's like ultimately dependent on the type of haircut that they want, right? Because if I have a 30-minute slot to do a haircut and somebody comes in 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late, even 15 minutes late, but they get like easy haircut, you'd be like number 2 on the side, and 4 on top, we'll say a little 4 on top, 2 on the side. That haircut might take me 10 minutes, maybe 15 if I'm really stretching it, right? So I'm not going to turn this guy away if he shows up 10, 15 minutes late, because I can knock that out, right? But on the other hand, if somebody shows up even 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late, and they're getting a skin fade with a hard part, you want some texturizing on top, they want the sharp lines, and I'm like, bro, I cannot do that in 15 minutes. I'm gonna have to reschedule, right? Or you can see, can one of your coworkers take him, or take your one that's coming in, right? So always try to like accommodate the clients. Don't just like no. No, but is a good kind of mind frame. Like, I can't do it, but this is what we can do instead. And your clients will, of course, get their feelings hurt and maybe even be mad at first, but they'll adapt, right? If not, they'll go somewhere else and respect somebody else's time. But you're gonna have to say no every now and then. So when clients want to add on services that you don't have time for, you might have to say no. You might have to send them to somebody else. Same thing if they show up late. But you always want to over deliver. So if you can add on stuff, do it. As long as it's not going to put you way behind. And if you do fall behind, you have to have the ability to catch up. It's okay to fall behind. We're trying to shoot for like, I think about it as like shoot for like 80, 90% of the time or on time, right? So if that's not you right now, then you need to work on your timing. But if you're running on time like 80% or more, clients really appreciate that, right? Because I don't know if I've covered this yet in the course, but like if you're always behind on your appointments, your clients are going to start showing up late, right? Because you're punishing the behavior that you want, which is showing up on time. So if your clients show up on time or early for their appointment, but you're always 20, 30 minutes behind or more, guess what's going to start happening? One of two things is going to start happening, right? They're either going to go to somebody else that is on time, or they're going to start showing up late, because it's like, why do I need to show up, on time for my appointment when my barber's always behind? So even when you are running on time, you're going to start to find that people showing up late because that's what you train them to do. So if you want to get your clients to show up on time, then you need to start being on time. This is why I'm not a big believer in, of course, it's situational, right? And it depends on where the business is at. But I'm not a big believer in like cancellations and no-show fees, because sometimes we have to cancel on clients. Sometimes we no-show on the clients, right? Barber calls out sick and they show up and they're like, no. So it goes both ways. If you want your clients to be on time, then you gotta be on time. So of course you want to be apologetic and professional and everything, but when you're telling people no, be respectful. Don't just be like, nah, bro, I can't. I'm too booked for that. Like, find an alternative, right? And ultimately, they're your customer. They're paying your bills. They're helping feed you and your family. Find a solution for that. And then don't forget about your teammates, right? Unless you're working by yourself and then you don't have teammates. But like if you work in a shop with other barbers, it's okay to send your clients to other people. That might be a shocker to you, but if you're doing a really good job on their hair, they're still going to come back to you. And then it also helps your team build, right? And then if everybody in the shop is doing that, then the clients feel comfortable going to everybody. So if the other barber on the other end of the shop is busy and they feel comfortable going to anyone, they'll come to you next time, and vice versa. So probably one of the hardest things that I deal with barbers is because we're all taught from barber school, like, worry about your own chair, fill your books, whatever. Nobody teaches like this team mentality, but it's actually, if everybody really does it, then it benefits the shop overall. Everybody stays busier if the clients feel comfortable going to anyone. And then talk about the arrival policy. Here's a scenario for you too that I posted in the group recently. But if you had a client show up late and the client after them shows up early, so they basically show up at the same time, then which one do you take back first? So I'll tell you, my answer is I usually will take the early one first, right? And the reason why is because I want to reward that behavior we were talking about earlier, and I want to punish the bad behavior. So if I have a client scheduled at 1 o'clock and another one right after at 1:30, so 30-minute time slots, and they both show up at 1:15, I'm probably going to take back the guy that was early and make the guy that showed up late wait, because that does two things. It rewards the behavior that I want, which is showing up early, and it punishes the behavior that I don't want, which is showing up late. So then next time, the guy that was late will show up early, hopefully, or he'll go somewhere else where they don't care about timing. Either way, we want to reward the behavior we want, because that's ultimately how we're wired as humans. What gets rewarded gets repeated. So we want to, and because it works the other way too. If they show up late and you take them back, in a way, that behavior was rewarded. And if you didn't say anything or anything like that, so they are more likely to show up late again because you rewarded that behavior, right? Not always, but sometimes subconsciously, clients, if you take them back late, they will start to get this idea of, oh, it's not a big deal if I'm late, right? And then there's that day where you really need them to be on time, right? And then they don't show up on time, and it's like, it's because you trained them to do that, right? So just keep that in mind, right? We want everything we do, we want to reward good behavior, punish bad behavior. And so that way you can start to train your clients to make it easier on you. When it comes to timing and haircuts and everything like that, I don't think, me personally, I like simple. So I don't think you should have like different pricing or different timing for different types of haircuts. We've done that in the past, so I know from experience that usually just does a really good job of confusing your clients. So if you have like a buzz cut option and then a regular haircut option and then like a skin fade option, in my experience, a lot of people don't even know what their haircut is called. So what could happen is like you're gonna have people booking skin fades, taking up like buzz cut time. So the way we had ours set up was a buzz cut was 15 minutes and a skin fade was 30 or something like that, 35, 40. So we would have people booking the wrong appointments, either on purpose or just not knowing. I think most people just didn't know. And it was frustrating for everybody, right? The clients were confused because they didn't know And sometimes the barbers would turn them away. And they had an appointment. It's just like, sorry, dude, we don't have enough time to do like whole transformation on your head. Like, booked a 15-minute slot, right? My next one's already here. So it's like, instead, you can just avoid that headache altogether. Just like figure out a time that you can get 80-90% of the haircuts that come in done in that time, right? So if it's 30 minutes, 45, whatever, just figure out a time. And I would just have like one, maybe two haircut options. So you have one. This is the way we do it. We have a 30-minute option, and then we have a 45-minute option. The 45-minute is the premium, so that's the one for people that want more complicated cuts, that want more time and attention, or new clients. We kind of gear them to book that one. And then we have our regular cuts at 30 minutes, right? Not every haircut takes 30 minutes, but that's what we give. And some haircuts take more than 30 minutes, but 30 minutes is what we give the barbers. And we found that having that set up has been so much easier. So that's in the timing, and there's a whole pricing course in this group. But when it comes to that, I just want to give you a little tip there. I don't think you should have different timing for different haircuts. It just confuses your barbers. It confuses the clients. So just keep it simple. Don't have too many options when it comes to online booking, and just going to make everybody's life easier. And like I mentioned, we're going to have bad days. There's going to be days that's just like, seems like skin fade, skin fade, skin fade. It's like you did 10 skin fades in a row. You're just like crying all day, and it's stressful. That's part of the game, right? So you just have to realize that you just want to try to be on time most of the time. You're gonna fall behind. I promise. I fall behind. It's the ability to catch up is the more important thing, right? So if you fall behind, can you catch up? Because if you can, then it's okay. Maybe if you're behind like 3 appointments in a row, by that 4th appointment, you're back on time, right? Then you can also learn, this gets into rebooking, but you can try to like schedule your appointments in advance. So if you have a haircut that this guy takes you a little longer, book him time, right? And the next guy that you book after that is like easier haircut. So it's like a little bit more advanced, but you can literally like set up your schedule to make your life easier by rebooking people and having a little bit of strategy when it comes to how you rebook people. You can also take those people that have the more complicated haircuts that take you longer, and try to take them off your busiest days, like Friday, Saturday, right? And move them to like Tuesday or Wednesday. You have more time maybe. It's a quieter day, right? So there's 2 different ways you can use rebooking to make your life easier when it comes to time. And then also just think long term. It's something that I don't know if I'll ever really master this for myself, but I said it earlier in the course, but I think I should repeat it because it's so important. But getting a haircut done on time is important, but it's not the most important, right? So if you're still struggling with quality, I think it goes in this order, right? Quality, consistency, and then timing. So if you don't know how to do a good haircut, focus on learning on that first, right? Once you feel like you have a pretty decent system, now it's time to figure out, how can I do this level of quality consistently so it comes out the same every single time? And using client notes can help that, right? But it's a lot of it's about the system you use, right? Like I have a system for how I do a skin fade. I do it the same way every single time. So I know that if I just do it and I don't try to switch it up, it doesn't need to be like exciting being a barber. Like it should get to a point where it's boring, right? At least the cutting part, right? Clients keep it interesting, but the cutting part should get to a point where it's boring. And then going back to the beginning of this video, it should be a lot easier to talk, because the way I think about it is like, you don't really have to think about walking and talking at the same time, right? Like, you can probably walk and talk to somebody at the same time without too much mental effort, right? So I think that once you get to the point where you can do a haircut without really thinking about what you're doing, when you get to that point, that's when it's like, okay, maybe you can try working on a little bit more of the client interaction and the talking and things like that, and then start working on your timing, right? But until you get there, it's going to be really difficult. So I would just say, focus on quality, then focus on consistency. Once you've got those 2 pieces down, then you start to bring the time down, right? Super important. I don't know if I've mentioned that so far in this course, but it's the kind of order that I tell the barbers that work with me to go in, because a lot of people will try to jump straight from I barely know how to do a haircut. Now I want to do it in 15 minutes. Like, oh, you need to figure out how to do that consistently, right? Because ultimately, what the clients want is a good haircut. That's all they want. Clients are actually super simple. All they want is a good haircut. But we've done so many surveys on this, and what most people care about the most is consistency. They want a great haircut, but they want it every time, right? Which is not too much to ask for, but it's actually really difficult to find barbers that can consistently deliver a great haircut. And I think it's, I don't know, just getting new tools all the time. You're trying new techniques that you saw on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, and it's like, no, man, stick with what works. That's what's gonna make you more consistent. If you're using shit tools, then of course, yeah, upgrade them. But once you have a good setup, a good system, stick with that, man. Don't try to, it's supposed to be boring, right? Be okay with being bored, right? Because that's where the money is. It doesn't need to be exciting. Like, you're gonna make something exciting, make the conversation exciting. But as far as like cutting wise, once you find a system that works for you, stick with that. Because ultimately, clients care the most. Of every survey we've done, clients consistently say the thing that they care about the most is a consistently good haircut. I've even had surveys where I was like, would you take a 10 out of 10 haircut, best in the world, but it's only like every 5 haircuts? Or would you take like good haircut, maybe it's not the best in the world, but it's like every time it's good? And every single time the clients always say, I'd rather just take the haircut that's like pretty good every time than trying to get the best haircut like every now and then, just randomly, right? So just remember that, like, clients care most about consistent. At least every survey we've ever done says that. So think long term, right? So timing is one of the last things you should do, but it's going to be the thing that has probably the biggest lever on your income, because it's the only way that I know of that you can, well, there's a few ways, but it's one of the simplest things that you can do to start making more money is just getting more done in less time. And that's just getting more efficient, cutting hair faster. But think long term, right? Because you want that client to come back, right? Because if your clients don't come back, you're always going to need to be marketing, and that sucks. So you want to retain people. So it's like you got to give them good quality, good experience overall. It has to be a consistent experience. The haircut's part of that. And then ideally get them in and out in a decent time, especially if you're working working with professionals that value their time. People that have higher spending power, they're going to be put a higher value on their time. So people that are, maybe if you're on the lower income bracket, you're doing cheaper haircuts, they might not care as much. But when it comes to the higher income you go, they're going to care a lot more about their time. So it's really going to either help you or hurt you if you can figure out how to get your haircut times down. And talking to clients is probably the biggest way to start to build relationships, but don't let it slow you down, right? Always try to find that balance, right? You talk some, you cut, they talk some, you go back and forth. But read that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because it'll at least give you some really good questions that you can conversation starter in ways to kind of direct conversation back on them. Basically what I'm trying to say. It's more than just being able to do a good haircut. It's the whole experience, and the haircut and the conversation is part of that. So focus on that, and hopefully this helps you out, but it helped me out. So I'll see you in the next video.